so loud outside. Sorry. I'm just gonna move you over a little bit. I recorded this video already and didn't record sound, so hopefully this works and the sound records. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's and that 2021 is going well for all of you. I got some pretty bad Vlogmas burnout, so I took some time to myself to reset. Creating a schedule for myself has been proving a bit difficult, but I'm hoping this year is a bit better, as I do have a 2021 resolution video that I want to get out soon. But today I'll be talking about what I read for January. One resolution I will share with you and mention right now is that I want to read 50 books on my Goodreads challenge. So last year, it started off the same. I wanted to read 50 books, but got so behind that I changed it to 25, and I still didn't make it. I only read 17. However, I don't know about anyone else, but there's just something different about how I've been feeling lately that makes me think I can do a lot of the things I kept putting off last year. For example, I've always wanted to get healthier and work on myself, as I do feel sick quite often, as I'm sure you know with all my videos of me being like, hey, how's it going? I was sick, sorry, it's been so long. And I want to get a handle on that. And for some reason, I find myself not reaching for my usual junk foods that I crave, or even just eating less of them when I do. Has anyone else felt a little differently lately about their goals? I'm not sure. Anyway, for the month of January, I have read 7 books so far this year. Goodreads states 8, but I didn't actually finish one of them because it was absolute garbage, which I will talk about in a second. I'm already 7 books in, and last year, as I said, I read 17 books. I'm already well past half of last year's reading in general, so I'm super excited to focus on reading more and exploring all those worlds and voices that I've been putting off the last few years. So I haven't done one of these in a really long time, so I have redone my thinking on how I want to do them. So I'll be talking about my least favorites first, and then going to my most favorites that I have read each month. Starting with 1 star, which on my list is Asylum by Madeleine Roux. I gave this 1 star because I was under the impression that this is going to be really creepy, and it's actually pretty disjointed in accomplishing that. I have no belief at all that the characters are 16 when they're written in a really young way, and on the other hand, aren't afraid of anything that Roux introduces, which makes it less scary. Like, the characters keep going into this creepy ass room over and over again. There's even an event that happens, and I won't spoil it, and I still have they still have no care in the world about it, and they keep going wherever they want. They make rash and sudden decisions that are really stupid and have no thought whatsoever, but then they're supposed to be young adults. I don't think I've ever met a 16-year-old who thought this way, even with the weird-ass decisions we may have made when we were at that age. It was really silly, and the main character's pretty arrogant and a judgmental jerk, almost immediately judging even just his roommate and writing him off as a friend literally for no reason I can find or personally think of. They're all at this special summer school thing to get ahead and possibly get into that school or a more lucrative school by taking these summer classes. Yeah, he's judging some other kid. Dude, you're a nerd too. Get over yourself. So that is a brief rundown of why I disliked it, and I gave it 1 star. I'm pretty disappointed that I bought the set, as I won't be continuing reading it, but I'll probably donate them and see if someone else enjoys them. The second book I gave a 1 star to is the book I didn't finish, which was This Messy Magnificent Life by Janine Roth. I also bought this, so that's fun. Also, before I talk about why I gave it 1 star, I want to give a quick trigger warning for those who may have had issues with eating disorders, sexual abuse, and suicide, as there are some topics surrounding that in my short review as well as in the book. I only read to page 40. That being said, this book sucks. I'm sorry. If you like it, why? I read to page 40, as I said, and I was pissed. There absolutely should be some kind of trigger warning at the beginning of this book. Usually I do not agree that books should have them, as it can take away from a storyline or even spoil it depending on how it is written, but all of these triggers in the first 40 pages are so casually mentioned it felt really icky continuing to read it, so I didn't. They were mentioned so nonchalant and out of nowhere that I found myself gasping at some points because of how surprising it was. For example, she states, and by that I mean she doesn't imply that only some people struggle with this or that it could be a factor or anything like that. She states that people who have issues with food have a direct correlation with being fondled by an uncle. What the fuck? I am fat. I know this. I have a mirror, and it was because I eat too much food. End of story. I do not have a good relationship with food, and though there are emotional reasons why I sometimes eat the food I do, not a single one of those reasons has to do with that. I was appalled. She even casually starts off a sentence about a food issue she had with literally the words, "A few days before I tried to kill myself, I blah blah food blah blah." What? How do you casually mention something like that? She also discusses food very, very unhealthfully. She doesn't mention the word eating disorder in what I had read, but most of the things she says about food is really disordered, and actually, in my opinion, pretty dangerous to be reading in what is actually called a guide to mind, body, and soul. Are you kidding? It was ultimately a huge disappointment because I thought it could be relatable, and other than us both being big women at some point, I'm sure she's lost all that weight with all these food self-help books, that's where our similarities ended, and I will be recycling this book. Donating it does not seem right to me, nor does any other means of getting rid of this book, so I will be throwing it in the recycling. I don't want to share these ideals with anyone. I think this book is dangerous for a lot of mentally struggling people, and I don't want anyone that I know to encounter this book just because I don't want it on my shelf. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. That was a very passionate rant about this book. The next book I gave 2 stars, and that was The Chocolate Thief by Laura Florent. And the rest of these books were on Kindle and through the library, so I don't have them, so I'll just pop a thing right here so that you can see the covers if you want to read them too. So this was a cutesy easy read, which you will notice is going to be a pattern for me because that's what I'm in the mood for as of late. The reason I gave it a 2 was because literally so much could be solved in all the issues introduced by just communicating properly. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that if this couple was a real life couple, they'd end up apart because the communication level is atrocious. It reminded me a little bit of Pride and the Prejudice, but missed a lot of the key components that actually made that novel good. They both seem very arrogant and unlikable as well in general for me, so I wasn't that gushy kind of happy I typically get when you're rooting for a couple. Other than that, it was simple romance that I didn't enjoy as much as I had hoped, and that's why I gave it a 2. Another romance novel that I read, I gave a 3 stars to, and that was Meet Me at the Cupcake Cafe by Jenny Colgan. This was a cute novel. It gave me a sense of woman power, but it definitely left a bad taste in my mouth for certain elements and cliches. Like, the villain in this book is, like, way too villain. Like, I don't even know how someone could be so nasty. I'm sure they exist, but it just, like, ugh. The characters, for the most part, are decently written, and it was a breeze to read. I think I read it in a day, but it just wasn't a 5-star read for me due to, like, the things that I love in a book, like massive character arches and growth. Anything to make me cry and stuff like that just doesn't meet my criteria for a 5, so it was okay, so I got an average rating. The other 3-star read for January was The Guest List by Lucy Foley, which may come as a shock to some of you since it was one of the top books for Goodreads in the thriller section. I think it might have even won. I really enjoyed this book for the unreliable narration of all the characters introduced, but I felt like there's something missing, and it wasn't thrilling to me. It was more mysterious, like an Agatha Christie novel in the sense that you had no idea who did what and why, which I enjoyed, but I also felt as though none of the characters liked each other in the least bit. Married couples didn't seem to like each other, nor did the actual couple getting married. It was a slight miss for me. I can definitely see elements in why it was a huge contender last year. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I also read The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez, which I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book, and I found the creation of the relationship through a friendship refreshing than the typical hate to love cliche, which I do like sometimes if it's done really well. I literally just read Christina Lauren do that, and I really loved it, as you remember. It added an extra element for me. I think having an element of heartbreak was also something that added to the story for me, but I won't go into it because it's a spoiler. I liked the characters, and I was so grateful that they were all very honorable in the sense that they didn't go against their values just because they were distracted and wanted to at the time, which happens a lot in romance. They're just like, oh, I have a boyfriend, but I'm so into you, let me cheat for some reason, and then they end up together, and it's like, no, stop it. So I don't prefer that, but it was nice to see that the author didn't do that. I did put on hold the second book, which is, funnily enough, her first book that she wrote, and I'm excited to see what her initial thoughts were for some of the characters featured in this read, and it actually just came through on my library app today, so I'm excited to start that. Now on to the 5-star reads. The first book I read in January in general was The Thinking Woman's Guide to Real Magic by Emily Croy Barker. It was recommended to me by my friend as it is her favorite book so far, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was nothing like what I was expecting, and I was desperate to find out more about it when I was done, so I was really excited to learn that the second book is coming out this year. However, I was also disappointed in the fact that it wasn't already out. You know those books where you finish it and you immediately need to know what happens, and you just can't because the second book isn't out? I felt that with this novel, so I'm super excited to read the second one. It's really magical and had a lot of amazing elements in it. I think it was super creative and out of the box. It has been nothing like what I have read before, yet still had some elements that I love to find in a book, like friendship building, unreliable characters, and world building that doesn't go on forever. I'm so happy my friend recommended to me this book, and I'm really excited to read the second one, so that's why I gave it a 5 stars. And finally, the last book, and one I also gave 5 stars to, was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I love how everything was set up in this novel, how Evelyn's story is of constant growth with sprinkles of other characters growing as well. It has so much love and heartbreak in it, and I love reading fictions based in historical societies. I'm not sure if that's considered a historical fiction, as I imagine they're like old-timey, like Bridgerton type of things. I just watched that, that's why I'm using that as an example. But this is about like societal norms of Hollywood and how women like Evelyn were able to conquer despite all the things that worked against them. I think there's a lot of good points in sexism, feminism, and going against the grains of world perception, which I loved in the book, and it also assisted in giving me a bit more perspective of no matter who you are and what life you're living, wealthy or not, one can still go through fairly similar life events. I loved this book, and I think a lot of my friends did as well. It was really touching, and I look forward to reading more of Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I forgot to mention at the start of this, was the author. Anyway, so those are all the books I have read this year so far, and in the month of January. I most likely won't be doing TBRs for this year, or at least a while, due to me not reliably reading those particular books. I think it takes a lot of pressure off of me, and will help me reach my reading goals if I'm not so rigid about what I should be reading for the month. Also, next Wednesday, I'm hopefully having my last eye surgery, fingers crossed, and I won't be able to see for a while, so most of the books I'll be listening to on Audible, which I'm going to finish The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, but other than that, I'm not sure what else I should listen to. If you have any suggestions, let me know down below, or even if you just want to say hi. I love when I get comments, and it really helps out my channel. And lastly, if you want to know what I'm currently reading, head over to my Goodreads. I'm not super in love with the app, but it is mostly up to date while I look into other literary apps. If you're interested in those other literary apps, let me know, and I would be happy to share. Thank you so much for stopping by today and watching my video. It means so much to me, and if you want to see more videos like this, feel free to like and subscribe down below. You can also chat with me more about books or anything else at any of my socials that are in the description. I hope you have an awesome day and that you're having a great year so far. Thanks. Bye.